Welcome. Come on in. Welcome to another installment of Why Live. Welcome to January and a new year. Noah, thanks for being here. Oh my gosh.
So good to be here.
So good.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 42. This is at the tail end of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, where he is addressing upwards of 5,000 people, and basically just showing them a better way to live, taking new twists on old sayings and things that they've heard and adding to it or slightly changing the meanings. So that's where we find ourselves today. I will read it out for you so you can just sit pretty and enjoy it. So it says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you." So I'm assuming that the phrase "turn the other cheek" is something familiar. If it's not, to give you some background, it is a phrase that has been used to exemplify the extreme nonviolence of Jesus, sometimes even the passivity of Jesus. The goal of this reading is to break the cycle of violence, and to encourage people to not reciprocate violence when violence is done against them. While this is by no means a bad reading whatsoever, there is still a piece of it that can be lost in translation as we're reading this 2,000 years later. The full ramifications and understanding of this teaching, to be fully understood, we need to know some of the cultural. To start, a slap in the face in the way that Jesus is referring was reserved for the lowest class of humanity. This would be a slave or a woman. The oppressor, the one doing the slapping, would use the back of their right hand as a form of discipline. A slap in this way gets the point across in a very clear manner while not permanently damaging. After all, you would not want to permanently damage your own property. The right hand was used because the left hand was seen as unclean, dirty, therefore reserved for dirty and unclean acts. So imagine you yourself get slapped this way. Legally, you cannot fight back. And if you did, the punishment for fighting back or enacting violence yourself would be much worse than the initial slap ever was. So then you are stuck feeling disgraced, you're stuck feeling shamed, you're stuck feeling less than human. Then along comes Jesus with what seems to be a solution to turn your other cheek, to open yourself up for more ridicule and more hurt and humiliation. Except the interesting thing is that in offering your other cheek, you enact one of two options for the person who slapped you. Or they have to slap you with the palm of their right. This, in many ways, pigeonholes that person for 2 reasons. The first being, to use their left hand is to acknowledge that what they're doing is dirty or unclean. It was not socially accepted, and therefore would give some level of dishonor or shame to the person giving the slap. To use the palm of their right would be to acknowledge that you are equals. Back of the hand was used for slaves. The open palm would be someone of equal status. So, if you slapped someone with the palm of your hand, you were lowering yourself to the status of a slave or elevating that person up to your own status. Both options are unacceptable, and it forces the oppressor to see the violence of their own hands. And again, we can look at the other two examples that Jesus gives: forced carrying of a pack and the giving up of your cloak. So the giving up of your pack was something that Roman soldiers could legally do, pick out any citizen and have that person carry their pack for them for 1 mile. If you happen to pick a rich person, they would just delegate it to their slave, and the slave would then have to go and to carry the pack. So Jesus' suggestion of taking it to another level, go that 2nd mile, would actually cause the Roman soldier to be breaking the law. While yes, you are complying and being obedient, and on the surface, it looks like you're being gung-ho about it, you're really excited, and you're willing to go that extra mile, it would actually mean that the soldier could be punished or face some ramifications for breaking the law. The second, giving up of your cloak. This is in reference to legal battles. If you are poor and you couldn't repay your debts, sometimes they would ask for you to give the clothes off to your own back. So in this case, you're supposed to give up your shirt. And it's not a shirt like I'm wearing or what we would typically wear. It's more of a tunic. It covers your whole body. So to give up your tunic, you're stuck with your cloak, the one last thing that you could have for warmth at night or to cover your body. By giving up your cloak, you're essentially naked. And interestingly enough, shame surrounded by naked bodies in that culture, the shame isn't put upon the person who is naked. The shame is put upon the people who see the naked person. Here, take it all. Causes the person who is abusing their power and abusing the legal system on the poorest members of society, forces that shame upon them to see a naked body. Also, within Israelite community, if you were to take someone's cloak, you were supposed to give it back to them every single night so that they could have something warm to sleep in. This would force that person, again, who is abusing this legal system, to see the person that they have abused every single night. Eventually, they probably wouldn't even come back in the morning because it would be such a hassle. So all three of these examples flip the script. They give agency back to the oppressed under the guise of compliance and under the guise of obedience. I understand, at least I hope today, none of us are owning slaves. So, and slapping someone in public is no longer a common practice. So, today, what are some things equivalent to these acts? Where are the areas of our life where we ourselves need to stand up for our own dignity, where we need people to see us as human? On the flip side, where are you treating others without dignity? Where are you seeing another person? I want to make sure to acknowledge the source of this all. I didn't start thinking about this passage. In fact, I hit a lot of obstacles coming up with what to talk about today until Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Thinking about his work in this nation is what initially got me thinking about this reversal, this flipping of the script, this demonstration of nonviolent protest. In a similar way, violence was done to Dr. King and all of the people who worked alongside of him. We have videos and pictures of peaceful marches being met with fire hoses and police dogs being leashed upon people who are just trying to fight for equality. So let's not forget that Martin Luther King wasn't the sole figure of the civil rights movement. There were men and women like Roy Wilkins, Thurgood Marshall, Claudette Colvin, Diane Nash, Aileen Hernandez, and countless others. It was their turning of the cheek and this newfound understanding that awoke a nation to the violence perpetuated against them on a daily basis. The struggle that we have today, we don't own slaves. We're not slapping people in public. But there are systemic problems that we are facing. And the problem with these systems is that it's not perpetuated by a single person or a single factor, but of many. Turning the other cheek in this newfound sense now advocates for everyone who was figuratively or literally slapped or treated as less than human. Forcing the violence of oppression to be seen by the oppressors is what brings about change. And again, it's not even a single person or a single system, and you can be a wonderful human being and still perpetuating an unfair norm. It wasn't until regular people saw this violence against the civil rights movement that change really began to happen, as those in a position of power saw the unfairness in how people were being treated. And again, they weren't alone. Martin Luther King didn't march on Washington by himself. There were thousands of other people joining him. Jesus was not the only one talking about turning the other cheek. He was talking to 5,000 people and instructing them to do the same, to stand up for one another, not to stand alone. The freedom that Christ brings is the true equality for all of humanity. And historical figures like Jesus, like Martin Luther King Jr., are excellent guides as long as the work is continued. So my challenge for all of us, until we speak again, is to stand up for the dignity of others. Look for ways to help, and look inward for ways that you yourself, I'm sure, are a wonderful person and might not be realizing the times that we're upholding an unjust norm. I know it can be difficult, and I don't want you to just feel guilty or shame today. That's not what this is about. I just hope that we can begin looking for ways to see where people are being unjustly treated, where the dignity of humanity is being left by the wayside, and where we can stand up for others when they are being pushed down. That's all I got.